Jump into the podcast with something a little bit different from what I've done before. So I texted you prior to this asking what we'd like to discuss and what kind of things you'd been consuming in terms of your media diet, in terms of podcasts, in terms of books and stuff. And one of the things that we had in common was the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which is, for me, probably one of the most pivotal books that I've ever read in my entire life. It really changed how I looked at things. And one of the concepts that they introduced in that is a thing called a mission statement. And to summarize, it's basically the principles that you conduct your life by, of which all your actions are dictated from. So for you as a person, what kind of characteristics or personality traits do you think best describe you and why?
It's a really tough question, but I like to be introspective and kind of self-aware and try and think how I act and what I do. So I would say integrity, loyalty, and honesty would be probably the 3 things that are probably the top of my list.
So integrity, loyalty, and honesty.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that you didn't put ambition in there as well, because when I think about you, ambition is probably what I put at the forefront, and I guess this stems from honesty as well, but you're just a very forward person. You always say exactly what you think, and that's very much like the idea of what I have of you in my mind.
I think that does stems from honesty with myself. What do I want to get out of life, and just being honest about that, and just thinking, right, what do I want to achieve? But it all ultimately comes down to how you execute it in your actions. So talk is cheap at the end of the day.
That's one thing I was going to ask. So how is that? As that honesty and reflection became more prominent in recent years, have you been able to understand that to a better degree and maybe change the agency of your life through that?
Yeah, I think over the past couple of years, really just started to change a lot of things about my life. Just cutting stuff out, just losing dead weight in a lot of the senses, stuff I was consuming, playing games, for example, just trying to be like, what you consume is kind of what you're going to think and what you're going to believe. So really just trying to read more, trying to just be more productive. But I'm never going to be perfect with that. And it's always just keeping that in mind and just being like, right, if you fall down, then just get back up and try to keep going.
Yeah, it's a very logical approach to it, that you can't be perfect. I want to touch on how we talk about what we consume and how that kind of affects what we produce, because I think that's something I'm becoming more aware of in recent years, certainly, is that the media diet and the podcasts I listen to, the sort of stuff I would maybe watch on YouTube or something, like, it massively dictates how I live. And you talked about there dead weight, and I've found that to be the case in recent years with people as well, as trying to find people that are of the same mindset, or mentors, for example. Is that something you've looked into, trying to develop that kind of mentorship student relationship?
Yeah, that's one of my big goals for this year, is to reach out more to people that have achieved things that I want to achieve, and really just keeping and fostering relationships that maybe I've let go by the wayside, that I want to rekindle as well. Because I don't think it's always good to speak to new people, but there's always people that might be right under your nose that maybe you don't appreciate, that you've not that you've not spoken to properly, and just got into those conversations, because it's one of those things where it's tough if you go out with your friends or whatever to actually sometimes get to a deeper level, which obviously you're very good with the podcast, which obviously commend you for doing, is you get to that kind of, you peel back the layers and that you will get under it. So it can obviously be tough to do that, but yeah.
Yeah, it's weird having a different frame with a friendship. Someone that maybe was just surface level, you don't really talk about these deep things. How do you approach that situation of maybe saying to them, like, quite often, you're one of the only people that I talked about this, but I would say to you, like, let's be accountable for each other. Let's check up and make sure we're still progressing towards our goals. And there's very few people that I would trust with that, but I think you need those sorts of people in your life to make real progress.
Yeah, no, definitely, would 100% agree.
Something you spoke to me about when I asked you what kind of diet you were consuming in terms of media, you mentioned the 12-week year. And
Yeah.
upon hearing about that, I'd never heard of the book before, but I looked up a summary for the book on Spotify and gave it a listen to. And I'm just wondering what you most get out of that book and how it kind of changed your perception.
It was just a really good book. Just really hit home at that point in my life. I felt like I had a lot going on, like almost like a funnel type way. It just helped me like funnel all these sort of ideas into like, right, 2 goals. And the standard, this is obviously very relevant now because we've just turned into 2023. But setting your New Year's resolutions, and then you're like, oh, it's a year away. I've got plenty of time. So then 1 month passes by, 2 months passes by, and there's still no real pressure on you to actually get the goal done. So the main concept of the book was essentially, we'll just make your year in a 12-week period, and then every week matters. And then it's kind of, I've only completed one 12-week year with 2 goals in mind, and it's kind of amazing what you can actually achieve in that sort of, it's still a long time, 12 weeks, but when you just sort of condense that and put that pressure on yourself, I think I work better with a timeline. So it was a good, it was a really good thing, and just slot right into my life. Just something that I just went, right, read the book, it hit home, and that was it, implemented.
And so that 12-week year, did you write it out as a calendar? And how did that incorporate what is it that you do just now? So what is it you're actually doing on a day-to-day basis, and how is that 12-week year applied to what it is you do?
So it was kind of like 2 aspects of my life. So it would be like fitness, which I go in and out of phases of getting right into it and then falling off. And I was just like, right, I need to lose some weight. So it was, my first goal was to get under 90 kg. And I was like, right, every week we'll do this. And then it just sort of gradually sort of got there over time. And then the second goal was to do relating to trading, so my working aspect of my life. And it was just, it just put everything into perspective, and it just sort of lights a fire under your arse, basically, to be like, right, I need to kind of get this done, because the 12 weeks, even though it is a kind of long time, it's like a perfect kind of period.
Yeah, it's something I think I'll incorporate as well, because it's just an easier way to conceptualize things. That year seems so airy-fairy and you can't really put your hands on it, but 12 weeks really makes a difference. 3 months is kind of a perfect time to set yourself for something. That's kind of what I've done with the podcast unknowingly, as I've set myself 100 days to do 50 podcasts. I don't know how, it's just the entropy of the universe that I've managed to end up with the same idea. But you touched on what you do briefly, and you said that you're trading just now. I want to get into 2 things. 1 is the how, and 2 is the why. But before we get into that, I want some kind of context into like how exactly you got into trading and how you progressed from that just first initial knowledge of what it even was to where you are now.
So to bring it right back, I started to the beginning. I've always been interested in business, and obviously anybody that knows me will can attest to that. But it's just always something I really, really liked, really just had an inkling for. Obviously studied it through school and stuff like that, but never once were stocks mentioned, or was it was kind of something you have to go out yourself. You sort of let the sort of beaten track is, right, just go get your job, become a manager if you can, and then sort of progress that way, which didn't seem that appealing to me, to be honest. So at the beginning, basically, it was about 2 years ago, I just started investing, just threw myself in, saved up some money from my job, just started investing here and there, just a standard approach, try to diversify, trying to buy good companies, thinking that was a good thing to do. And then obviously as you go along the journey, you learn stuff along the way. and I happened to fall into something online, which was just complete luck that I managed to stumble upon something, and then I went, right, I'm going all in on this thing, and then it happened to sort of work out. So it was just complete luck that if I went in and started investing and it went badly, I would have probably went, right, okay, this isn't for me. But it just completely like sucked me into this massive rabbit hole that is just like, I'm still in it and I'm still trying to learn.
Yeah, what was that? I have a feeling I know what that one thing was, but can you speak to what that was?
Yeah, so it was in January 2021. There was a big like buzz online about these stocks, AMC and GameStop and other ones like Nokia, and just like companies that were basically about to go under.
Yeah.
That lots of retail investors were like, right, we can. GameStop was the case study for this, and it obviously went from $5, $2 to over 500 just from the retail pressure. So there was a real movement behind it. And yeah, so I just fell into that and ended up doing all right out of it. But it was more the learning process. It was more, how does the market actually work? Why did this happen? And just sort of researching that, which was my main sort of objective out of it. And anything that came with that, it was just a bonus.
How did you find the learning process? Because I know a lot of people try or want to get into stocks and they find that initial roadblock of all this terminology, and it's all very complex looking and complex sounding to the beginner. So how did you kind of overcome those initial stages?
I would say it's just got to do with your personality. It just really I just really liked it. And if you don't like something, it's never going to last. I think that in any aspect of life. So it just really, really appealed to me. So that was that was basically it. It wasn't like I was researching this and I was like, oh my God, like I can't do this anymore, or there was never any point. It was just like, there's more stuff to learn. There's more stuff to learn. It just snowballed, and just it still is. Like I'm still learning today. That's one of the best things I find about it, is it's just never ending. But I do, and it's a very gate kept industry, especially for the retail investor, more institutional. You can get in there with a group of people and they all work together, but the retails are on the other side of that, so it's challenging in that aspect.
Yeah, it's real challenging because even I myself, I got into stocks and crypto. You were one of the people that put me onto AMC in the first stage, actually. And thank you very much for that, because that was an awesome tip. But my brother's very much the same personality as you, and that he got into trading, started making a bit of money from it, and then that just like had raptured his mind. So I think it is a certain personality type that just can't get enough of it. How are you finding that endless learning? Is that something you look forward to, or is that something that scares you?
A bit of both, if I'm honest. But I definitely do enjoy it, because it's one of the things where just every day I'm learning something new. And if you think you've got it sorted, the market will just tell you you don't have it sorted. And I listen to Bloomberg, like the financial channel, and even the people at the very top of the game that are getting paid ridiculous amounts, they are struggling, especially like last year. If it's not just trending upwards or trending downwards, then even they're struggling. So it's just realizing that and being like, right, I've got to just work with what I've got.
How much of it is actually understandable by logic, and how much is manipulated behind the scenes that you can never really fully get a grasp on it because the market won't react because you don't have access to all the information? Is there these things that you just can't have control over?
The analogy that I'm going to use is, it's like a roulette wheel, but you can, by taking certain steps, by doing research, put more greens on the board or reds on the board in your favour. You're never going to have it 100% all greens and you're betting on it going in the green, but you can put more there by doing more research. But sometimes it's just not gonna work out, and you just need to accept that. But that's part of it.
That's something I really want to get into. Is any trader that I've met that's been doing it for a decent amount of time, they seem to have this very blasé attitude to whether it works out or it doesn't. It kind of speaks to your risk tolerance and how you look at it. How do you find just the pressure of putting large sums of money within a certain thing, even with all this research, and then letting the market decide? How do you mentally process that?
I think it's a very tough thing because risk is dependent on your personality. What basically your own risk tolerance is completely linked to your own personality. But I was just naive at the start, completely naive and wet behind the ears, and just went in for it. So it wasn't like I was thinking like all about risk and all that. Like that was the last thing on my mind. I was just kind of infatuated by it and just being like, there's kind of a movement here, and I'm gonna try and ride this wave type thing. But now, like trying to do it as a job when I've got no other income coming in, that's where risk is like the main factor, and it does get a bit scary. So definitely now it's a massive factor.
How did you get to this stage where you are purposefully and by choice working without a job and going full time in the trading? Why did you do that? And how did you get to the stage where that was self-sufficient?
I got to it just because I thought, right, I've got a chance here and I've got some money saved up. I can give it. There's a kind of runway for some time, say a year, that I can just be like, right, what's a year out of my life realistically to try and make some of my dreams come true? And if I can't give myself a year, then I think I would have just looked back on it and regretted it if I didn't go for it. So I just didn't want to live with any regrets at the end of the day and just went, right, the cliche, no regrets, but yeah.
Tatted across the chest.
No regrets.
Yeah, mate, I think that's the awesome attitude to have. And the thing is, we have the luxury of youth just now, and that we are 23 years old and have the luxury of having a supportive and loving family and friends network, and that we can take massive risks like this just now, and we know that we can start again if need be. Why do you think more people our age don't do that, and then they just progress into the same career? They take the safe option and do the apprenticeship after uni or something like that. They just take the money first up rather than the possibility of earning that massive bag in the future.
I think it's just priorities, really. So obviously doing what we are doing, we are giving up a lot in the sense that we do enjoy it, but we're still giving up stuff. So people, like when I said I was doing this when I was leaving my job and people were asking me, I hated having that conversation because I know people don't understand it. But the way people are looking at me as if you're crazy, you can just see it in their eyes, like you're mental, like what are you doing? But that is one of the biggest like go signs for me. If people think I'm crazy, then I'm like, right, I must be doing something right, or that is just the way I'm wired, and people will just be like, right, that's completely wrong. But that's just life. People just have different opinions, and it's just the way it goes.
Yeah, I think there's something to being disruptive and being anti the norm. I remember, so one of the podcasts I listen to the most is Diary of a CEO, and he always starts the podcast by going into their childhood, and without fail, every single childhood that they talk about, they always talk about the person being a little bit different, feeling like an outsider, feeling like they weren't understood by other people. And it seems to be this commonality that anyone that ends up achieving a massive success has that in common. Talking on that, you talked about how you're risking more just now for the idea of your ideal life in the future. What does your ideal life look like?
Depends how far in the future.
Let's talk 5 years. Let's give a 5 year.
5 years, right?
Yeah.
5 years. So 5 years, I'll be 28. I'll be late 20s by that point. So I would have liked to have done a good couple of years of traveling between basically now and by about that age. And then I think then will be like basically to find a base camp. So hopefully travel and do a lot of trading. That's what the most appealing thing to me about the trading is that you can be mobile and all you need is an internet connection, and you can trade anywhere in the world. So I would love to have travelled like what you've done and experience these places to know where you would like to set up a base, and then obviously go and visit and have a network of people that you can go to places and visit, and then obviously have the trading basically on the side, just being like it is your job, but it's not something that I'm a slave to.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that is most appealing about trading, is that you have complete agency and personal responsibility over that process. You're not owned by
Definitely,
someone,
yeah.
you're not working under someone. On the topic of personal responsibility, have you always been the way that you like doing things for yourself? Not in a selfish way, but in that you like taking control of your own life in any fashion?
Yeah, definitely. If any employers are listening, I'm a great. I don't like to go do my own thing. Completely employable, but no,
Yeah.
not at all. You've hit the nail on the head. That's just it. But no, I would say I've always been like that in that aspect of my life. But it's just weird because like it's you yourself. Like you don't know anything different. So
Yeah. How well do you work under a boss?
um, I've had good bosses and bad bosses. Obviously, worked in retail for a good few years, so there's been a few dodgy ones, shall we say? But it depends. If the boss treats me well, then I'll treat the boss well. It's just I'll work hard for them. But I wouldn't say I've got a problem with authority at all. I would understand, and I think with this training journey, one of the humbling things about it is that failure is a complete possibility and probably a probability that it might take several tries to then go back into the workforce and then come back out. But I think it's like something that I'm like visioned on, giving it a good bash. But then say it doesn't work out, I wouldn't have any grudges to go back and work and then come back out and then give it another shot when I've refined things as well.
Mm. You talked about your vision, and obviously we talked about the 12-week program. Do you have a figure that you want to get to in the space of 3 months, a year, 5 years? Is there a goal that you're working towards?
I'm working towards getting funded. So there's these things called prop firms, which are essentially if you can prove yourself as a trader and pass a certain challenge by creating a certain percentage in a certain time frame, then they will give you the first one's $10,000, and then you can graduate by taking more challenges and more. So I would like to just get my foot in the door at one of these prop firms and show, look, this is what I'm capable of, and then just start a rapport with them. And I think once I can get that started, then that'll be the first initial big sort of goal I've got for myself in these next 6 months.
How exactly does that work? So you need to achieve what specific percentage within what time frame, and once you qualify for that and you meet that target, they give you $10,000 and then you earn a percentage on whatever profit you make on that. How exactly does that work?
So most of them work that they're all different. So you've got different ones, and I need to weigh up basically the pros and cons of each one. And there's really a lot of stipulations there. So it would be like having a boss in that sense. But most of the time, whatever you make, so say you make 5% a month, you can keep most of the time it's 90%, and then they take 10, and then it just keeps going like you just. So it's actually a really well. It varies between 80 and 90%, but it's tough to pass the initial challenge, and then there's some FTMO is 20, so it's 30 days, but you only have 22 trading days, and then you would need to produce say 5% in the month or
Is that usually
something like that.
exactly the percentage is 5% on that portfolio?
Not entirely sure, but I know people that have passed, and that's what they aim for.
Why did you take this route rather than just trading on your own?
It's just a monetary thing. It's just I will always trade on my own as well next to that. So it's almost like you would prioritize your prop firm account first, make sure that percentage is hit, and then once that percentage is hit, you don't want to play with that money anymore because there's potential you could lose that percentage as well. So then you would go on to trade. So the first half of the month, ideally, I would trade the prop firm, and then if that money's there and it's okay, then I can trade my own account. But it's just a risk thing and a monetary thing as well, because you do need a lot of backing to obviously make a good amount of money in the markets.
Yeah, what I'm understanding from that is like the education cross pollinates either way. You do research on your own that helps with this. I'm assuming when you're in this prop firm, you're more part of a community of people that are also doing the same thing. Yeah. How did you reach out to anyone through Instagram or any of the socials? Anyone else doing the same thing as you? Do you have any consistent contact with people like that?
I do now. So I had to pay for a course, and I got in a Slack group with all these different traders that are doing the same things. And there's a risk manager in there, and there's an algo guy who's working on all the algorithms. So it's just been like I completely opened my eyes to it. But beforehand, I didn't know like anybody doing it. It was just my own research, just looking online and being like, well, what's the next natural step for me? And then that was the best option.
How important is that community in growing you as a trader? Not just in terms of the education, but I mean as an accountability partner as well. Is that something you check in with regularly? Have you found that that's maybe accelerated how you learn?
Oh yeah, completely. So it's one of those things where you tell somebody, oh, I paid for a course and it was however much, and then they'll be like, that's crazy, like no way. Like it's just like you need to try to do stuff yourself. You might move the needle a tiny wee bit, or you might grow slightly, but it's honestly just been so good for me because you can contact them most times of the day, and there'll be people in there that are just on the same journey as you, and it's really, really good to have that support, like network. And like if I'm doing trades, they've got a share a trade section, so everybody, when they're taking their trades, they're sharing them in there. Everyone's learning from each other. So if I'm not necessarily taking a certain trade or a certain setup, then somebody else is, and you can just go in there and view that and be like, right, what was their thought process, what was their methodology, and then learn that way as well. So it's kind of exponential what you can learn.
So you said with this as well, there's obviously an exponential how much you can learn, and you said earlier you could graduate to higher levels. What are the higher levels of funding that you can receive from them?
There's people in there that have went through the same course that I have that have received hundreds of thousands in account size, and then the risk manager who I was on a call with last night, he's managing a couple of million in his account, but he's obviously been doing it for years and stuff like that. So I know the potential is there, and that's what they really want you to aim high. It's just better for everybody. It's like a rising tide lifts all boats. So it's a good community.
A rising tide lifts all boats.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Can you
explain ever heard that before?
Nah.
It's just like if everybody, let's say everybody's doing well, then all the ships are going to rise. Just like more that everybody's got we feel like you're working in a team together. You're all pulling in the same direction, essentially.
Yeah. You mentioned in there as well that you had these adverse reactions from people when you mentioned how much the course cost. Was this something you mentioned to friends and family as well?
Yeah, mentioning friends and family, and it's just...
Can I ask how much in the podcast, or is that a private amount?
$1,000.
$1,000, right. Understandable.
Yeah.
I think this is something I'm coming to a realisation with recently as well, is that saying you've got to spend money to make money is entirely true, and it comes together with this boldness as well. Was like setting up this podcast. I've got a piece of equipment here that makes sure all the audio's good. I've got my laptop, I've got a camera over here, I've got these mics that are expensive. I've invested in a call with a guy that runs a very popular one called Danny Miranda. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Mm-hmm.
So I invested in a private call with him. You've obviously invested in this group as well. And I think that's something I'm coming to a realisation with.
It's a bit of a tangent, but have you heard like that Grant Cardone? You also know who he is.
Yeah,
that Alex Hormozy, like he paid so much for like each call with Grant Cardone.
Yeah.
That's just like obviously on that level, but you're like, he's like, it's worth it. It's just like one of those things where obviously that we're on a lot of a smaller scale, but it's just the same applies.
It's the weird thing. I don't know about you, but like a lot of people might have maybe a few grand in savings, right? And if you've got that support network at home, it's like otherwise it's just going to sit in the bank and it's going to sit there and it's going to be stagnant and it's going to do nothing. So you can speak to this better than anyone as a trader. It's best to put that money to use, and that metamorphosizes in different ways for different people. So for me, that's audio equipment, that's investing in my education around podcasting, around conversation. But for you, that's both investing, but also investing in being part of that group as well. It blows my mind that more people have all these savings and they decide to just let them lie there and don't invest in themselves when your 20s are the best time to invest in yourself.
I think as well, it's a lot, like, especially in the investing industry, there's a lot of charlatans or con men or people out there where every YouTube ad is, are you doing drop shipping? Are you buy my course? Are you doing this? And the initial skepticism is like, right, all courses are bad. If you can, why are you selling a course? If you're an investor, why can't you just make money? Like, and to a point, that is true. But there becomes a point in the journey where it's kind of a necessity to then reach out further and just obviously weigh up your options and make sure you're not just wasting money on a pointless thing, or you do your research on it. And what the thing that pulled me into the course was they done like calls and stuff like that beforehand and really found out what your goals and aspirations were, and then they were like, right, okay, they kind of tailored it to you type thing. And it doesn't seem like a very, like they weren't selling me a dream in a sense. And they were very honest. Like the risk manager guy says, I had to go back to my job 3 times before I made trading work for me full time, which I thought was really good and honest of him. He's not saying, give me more money and we'll make it work for you type thing. He's saying, look, this is going to be a long process. And I know about this 10,000 hours, about that concept of you need to kind of put in the 10,000 hours, and there's no substitute for that. It's just got to be done.
Can we speak more about that 10,000 hours and the reps?
Yeah.
What is that actualized in your mind, that those 10,000 hours have to be done before you're great at something? Can you just kind of expand on what that concept is, where you got it from actually as well?
Well, I got it from that book Mastery, which we've both read, by Robert Greene, which I would recommend to anybody. It was a great book. Didn't sell you any dreams in there. It was just sort of straight to the point. But I think the 10,000 hours is non-negotiable. But when you do your first 1,000 hours, the next kind of part of your journey will become more illuminated, and then the next 2,000 hours. So it's not just going to be a slog to the 10,000 hours. You're going to make progress along that way as well. So it's not like, it can be a daunting thing thinking about 10,000 hours, but that's just sort of the catchy sort of marketing thing. But it's just like anything. The more competent you become at it, the better you become, the more you enjoy it.
Yeah, I think the hard thing is people always give up in those initial stages. So those first 100, 150, 200 reps of doing a certain thing, whether it be doing a podcast, whether it be doing a trade, whether it be trying a new skill, whether it be making a YouTube video, whether it be drop shipping, they assume that progress and success will come so early. Something that I've came to terms with recently is that I probably won't make money off this podcast for at least a year. 6 months to a year maybe before I make any money off it. Maybe a year to 2 years before I start making it big and make it fucking excellent. And it's weird because you have to detach yourself from that fast money mindset that we're sold every day. Everything, like anything you consume, YouTube ads, advertisements anywhere, like everyone's selling you that dream that you can make money fast, and the reality is
Shopify dropshipping, bro. You not tried that?
I actually have tried that in the past as well. I had back in the day, it was like a travel goods store, dropshipping store where I sold like travel goods to people in America from China.
I did not know that.
Made like
That's class.
120 quid over the space of like 4 months, and it just like barely even covered the cost of my Shopify subscription. So
That's too funny.
yeah, have tried it in the past, but yeah, the reps is something that's so hard to get used to. I'm wondering, does social media and just like short form content and instant gratification in your mind have an effect on how quickly we expect to see results?
Oh, totally. It's just, I think like podcasts are a great thing and I love listening to them in their entirety, but I also like going on YouTube shorts and seeing lots of just a refined 30-second point that's just to the point and that's it. And it is addicting. And I can, obviously it's became popular for a reason, but no, sorry, I've just completely lost my train of thought there.
It's all good. What does your media diet look like just now? Like what, in terms of what you consume in a day, whether it be podcasts, books, YouTube, like talk me through a day of your consumption and what that looks like.
So I'm at a stage right now where it's kind of more about execution for me than consumption. I'm trying to stop. So the last 6 months of 2022 was a lot of reading for me and a lot of podcasts and stuff like that. But I've tried. It's like I would relate it to the gym in a sense that like it becomes a point of diminishing returns. That the first maybe 2 years in a gym, you're like, this is brilliant, I'm packing on muscle, this is all going so well. And then it gets to a point where you just sort of plateau. And I felt like that with reading in a sense that I was reading so much and I was consuming all this content. But now it's got to the stage where I'm kind of 2023 is like action time for me and execution. But I really enjoy listening to podcasts when I go out a run. Diary of a CEO, Modern Wisdom. Shout out Ross Marks for putting me onto Modern Wisdom because I love that podcast. It's really good. Apart from the 5 minutes of ads at the start, hate on that. But no, just let podcasts mainly, and then YouTube. I got YouTube's a really good resource for learning trading and stuff like that. But you need to cipher through a lot of rubbish.
Yeah, that's one thing I really want to get through in this podcast is exactly how you would teach someone. So say, for example, I'm dumb as shit, I've never even learned of investing before. I've no idea what it is. What would be the advice that you would give me to get me up to speed in a month? What sort of stuff should I consume? How should I, like, what should my philosophy kind of be? Like, how should I approach it to kind of cut out the shit that you've had to wade through?
Well, I'm very much of the opinion that you need to try yourself and get a real feel for it. So first of all, I'd be like, right, save up some money, and then if you're serious about it, then just start putting it to work. And you'll never know how you feel or your own investing philosophy until you've got that money in the market and it's out of your control. So that's very much a big part of it because everyone's different. Maybe you put it in and you see it go down a wee bit and then you're just pulling out straight away. So that's like every strategy pretty much that's ever been conceptualized is on the internet, but not everybody can trade or not everybody is profitable trading. So it's one of those things where a strategy that works for me might not work for you or one of our other friends. So it's very much a personality type thing. But I would just say basically give it a go and keep it as simple as possible with as few indicators, as few charting stuff like trend lines and stuff like that, and just sort of just sort of get a feel for it yourself first, and then that would be when, once you could come back after a wee bit of experience and be like, right, this is how I felt when I went into this trade, or this is how I felt at this point, then we could build on that.
Something I want to touch on, you just mentioned briefly there, is investment philosophies, and I want to learn more about, if you have one, what that is. But for someone, if we're to look at it very concretely, someone that's coming in, they're trying it out, what would you say is like maybe 2 or 3 of the best kind of YouTube resources or people to listen to give them a basic idea of how to kind of conceptualize trading and what to look at?
Again, I don't want to like repeat myself, but it's like such a big market essentially. So if you want to get into crypto, would be different from if you wanted to get into Forex or if you wanted to get into stocks. But there's lots. Graham Stephan, he has that iced coffee hour.
Yeah, I've
podcast.
seen his stuff.
So he's just like your general. If you say you've got a job, which is going to be most people, and you're making an all right amount of money and a wee bit on the side, he'll tell you what ETFs to invest in, which are like large trackers like the S&P 500. And then you could go into more day trading type stuff, where you've got the course that I'm part of, the YouTube channel called Desire to Trade. And they have really good resources all online with their tell you how to trade, technical analysis, and stuff like that as well. So it's a very large like bracket of things that you can learn.
So the way you trade will depend on, one, your kind of risk tolerance, and two, what you're kind of looking to get out into it, and maybe what you find most exciting as well. Because that's what, speaking to my brother, he's obviously right into his crypto, and that's what he finds the most intriguing.
Yeah.
And you said earlier in the podcast that there's just more to learn all the time, and that's something that you look forward to. So I guess finding what intrigues you the most is probably most helpful, because you want to be interested in the thing you're looking into, right?
And it's a lot of it's storylines, and a lot of it's, so with companies and stuff like that, there's always a storyline behind it. There's people, there's management. Excuse me, but what I've started learning recently is Forex, so like the foreign exchange, and it's a really low barrier for entry because you're trading like the pound against the dollar and stuff like that, and it's like 1.2, so you can buy a lot of that. It's like essentially trading a penny stock, but it doesn't move like a penny stock. So it's a really low barrier for entry, and that's where I would suggest, if you wanted to start trading, that's where to start. I kind of started in stocks and fell into it because of the whole meme stock short squeeze, but I've started in a sort of harder area, and I'm now like, right, I'm kind of stripping it all back and just going back to basics and learning about the currency markets. Okay,
awesome. With that, you've gave lots of good advice for someone that wants to maybe try it out, see if it's for them full time. You touched on briefly that Graham Stephan, something he recommended for the passive trader was to invest in ETFs. Is there any other advice you could give to someone that maybe just wants to passively invest, and even why they should do it as well, why they shouldn't leave money sitting in their bank?
Well, I would say, even if you don't think you're passively investing, if you have a pension or you have any sort of like plan at your work, you probably are passively investing. So I would say it's a worthwhile thing to look into and do some research on. And I would recommend just ETS, dollar cost averaging in, say every month. You're going to get highs, you're going to get lows, but overall it's, I mean, a case study of the stock market of the past, say, 100 years is that it has went up. In the grand time of history, that's not a long time, but you can just basically just keep buying in every month. And also another thing would be dividend stocks, which are a really good thing for the passive investor. And to buy good quality companies that pay a good dividend, and don't take those dividends out and reinvest them infinitely, and it will compound. And over time, it's just amazing what you can actually accumulate with dividend investing as well.
I want to go into that exactly. How exactly does someone go into it? Like, what platform would they use? How would they find a company that offers good dividends? What kind of research would they have to do to be able to find it? And how would they actually go from, oh, it's a good idea, to putting the money in that?
Yeah, so it's just all the resources online. So YouTube, dividend stocks, lots will come up. There's the Reddit r/dividends, great community of people in there that are showing like young people that are like, I'm making thousands a month off of investing. Say they're 28, they started doing it at our age 23, they've built up over 5 years, and then it just compounds and compounds, and then you're getting cash flow monthly from just holding stocks essentially. So I really think that's something. It's not a sexy way to invest. Essentially, you're not like, the stocks might go sideways or the stocks might go down slightly, but over time you're still paying you a dividend. So I would say that to do that, I would basically say research online, YouTube and Reddit.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those barriers to entry that's going to be too high for a lot of people because no one's holding their hand like, oh, come with me, I'll show you exactly how to do it. So I think that's just something with trading. You will lose a lot of people at that step, but that's just the way it is, I guess. You showed
No, definitely.
You showed expertise across a bunch of different types of investing. So I really want to get into what your investment philosophy is and what your strategy is. Can you speak more on both of them?
Yeah. So my investment philosophy at the start was very, very basic. And it was a buy and hold sort of mentality where it was just like accumulate as much shares as you can at a low price and you think it's going to go up, and then sell when you're happy with the profits that you've made. But now it's very much what your brother was talking about. He touched on was having like a set risk towards ratio. So I like to have a 1-to-1, and say the 1-to-1 gets hit. So that's basically what I'm risking I make on the trade. So that would be a 1-to-1 ratio. And then once that's hit, I'll move my stop loss, which is like automatically sells you out, to break even. So I can't lose any money. And then I'll move my second take profit to the about a 3-to-1 or a 2-to-1, whatever you feel in the trade, because every trade's different and the market can turn at any point. So it's just sort of what the whole saga 2 years ago and what's still going on now has taught me is just risk management. Take your profits when you can, because it's just an invaluable lesson to learn.
Yeah, taking your profits is something I should have learned a long time ago as well. Like, I watched some crypto stocks fucking skyrocket and I was just holding a bag, just like holding a fat bag.
We've all been there.
Yeah, it's something you really do learn only through actively investing, is that one, take your profits, and that's something my brother spoke to me about and I just didn't listen. You need to kind of learn that for yourself. And two, do your own
definitely.
research as well, as people can put you onto things and give you as much information as possible, but it's ultimately with trading, it's completely up to yourself whether you make that decision and how you make that decision. You just got to take the information that you're given and go with that.
Yeah, 100% agree, because you won't have the same conviction if you see something on Twitter or the famous Zach Morris pump and dumps. If he's just called something out and you buy it, you've got no conviction, like you've got no reason why you're holding it. So if times start to get tough, then it's just going to be like, all right, you're going to panic sell. But it's no, definitely agree.
People like Zach Morris and a few others in his circle, they obviously use Twitter and social media as an instrument. Do you think they use it in a way that they can get other people to invest in that stock, drive the price of it up, and then they sell? Do you reckon that's premeditated?
I don't know, but they've just been done by the SEC. They've been arrested, him and his group, basically for pump and dump. So the SEC obviously thinks so. I love how they go after the small fish, but not the big ones. The big guys just, they pay a fine and it's the cost of doing business. But if you're a small guy obviously he's incredibly rich as an individual, but it's just, yeah, it's really not a good look. Like, the optics of it aren't good if you're on Twitter saying buy this, and then it goes up and then comes straight back down. I don't think there's a chart you look at that he's suggested that hasn't just went boof, boof.
Yeah. So it's just straight stock manipulation at a point.
Yeah.
I wanna get into the juicy parts about your investments over time. Can you speak to your biggest success and your biggest failure?
Well, I think they're both the same, to be honest, of just seeing the paper profits in AMC and then taking some out, but obviously not enough at that point, and then it coming back down.
Mm.
But the methodology behind that, and it's something I kind of want to talk about, is in January of 2021. It was the 28th of January 2021. I remember it very well. Basically, these stocks all shot up at the one time, and they basically removed the buy button from the brokerages, so it was just sell button that was there, and it just completely, like, obviously the basics of supply and demand, you're just completely going to kill it. So we initially bought in, and then the buy button got took out, and I got bought in around $8-ish, and it went up to about 20, and then crashed right back down to 5.
Mm.
But the methodology behind it was, if they are taking away the buy button, it's a complete mismatch in the supply and demand that they've manipulated it basically. So I seen that as a real opportunity. That I thought, it went to 20 on that sort of run. If they've brought the price back down, there's no reason that it can't go to 20 again or higher. And then eventually it did. So I was really happy that that sort of methodology actually worked out and planned out as it did. But then the lesson comes in taking the profits, which we spoke about before.
Yeah, that lesson's a hard learned one. What do you think about AMC in its current state? Has it got potential in its near or mid-term future to either skyrocket or make it back into the 20s and 30s?
Yeah, I certainly don't want to tell anybody what to do with their money or anything like that. But I would say it's really challenging for AMC going into this new environment with interest rates going through the roof and with having a lot of debt. It's in the box office is down. It's only at 65% of what it was at 2019 levels. So it is going to be tough for it, but you can never say never. The largest theatre chain in the world, if Disney or Netflix or Amazon ever thinks, right, this could be a good opportunity while it's down low to maybe buy in or buy a stake, I can never write that off, that would be a possibility.
How much of you said that the market was being manipulated because that buy button it just disappeared?
Yeah, that's just complete fraud, yeah.
Can the retail trader ever win in that case, or is it just a case of riding the coattails of these big fish that make the trades?
Yeah, very much so. Is just realizing that you're handicapped. Basically, we are trading at a complete handicap, and as long as you can realize that and don't let it get you riled up and annoyed, because there was a certain point when I first learned about this stuff that it really got me going. When I was like, this is just completely unfair. But it's like free trading brokerages, so we can trade for free now, obviously on these apps. But ultimately, we are the product for these big hedge funds and market makers, that our trades are getting skimmed off the top because they want us to trade for free because they know that they can give us a worse price, and we won't complain about it. We're just happy to be there. We're just happy to be involved. So I think there is there's a real mismatch in the sort of retail trader and obviously the institutions. We are giving them money essentially because we want to trade. We just want to be part of it. But there are ways around that you can get your shares in your own name. So it's called direct registration of your shares. And that's what a lot of people in the GameStop community have done. And I think there's 58% of their float has been direct registered by retail investors. So this is taking it away from these brokerages and putting it in their own name. Because if you buy on a brokerage, say Trading 212, it's not actually in your own name. It's held by Trading 212 themselves, but they just credit that to you as they are your shares.
Do you reckon if AMC reached a certain stage and then people sold out, would the people that had directly registered receive their payments, and then the people that were through Trading 212 not? Is there an opportunity for that level of manipulation?
I think so. If you need to read obviously the terms of the brokerage and stuff like that, but it's definitely in there that in mitigating circumstances they can sell you out at whatever price they see fit. But in the UK, you are 85,000 is what it's capped out at basically. So if it was any more than that, they would only have to pay you the 85,000 is what they're kind of insured for.
Really? So if you made $1 million in profit and had those shares, if you've not directly registered them, then they wouldn't have to.
There's a
in a
potential
worst case scenario.
Yeah, that's a complete worst case scenario. That would be your broker. The brokers went under basically, and then you're just only insured up until the 85,000. The 85,000 point, but it's the same as like any like your Monzo account. It's or like Revolut or whatever. They're the same. It's like an 85. I'm pretty sure it's 85,000.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing that figure before. One thing I've been looking at more recently as well is like looking into the future is obviously this massive mistrust of the government, of banking and everything else. Is there anything else you're looking into in terms of hedging your bets? How do you independently keep income outside of a bank? Do you buy gold bars and stack them in your room and live in a castle? How exactly do you go about that?
Honestly, I'm still learning every day as well about this sort of stuff, and it's one of those things where I can completely understand why the average person is just completely perplexed by it and just doesn't want anything to do with it. But I would say crypto. I think that's got a big future. And I just don't think it's practical to buy gold bars essentially. But yeah, anything you can sort of like Bitcoin. Just I think that will just become like the digital gold. So obviously being coined that before, but yeah, just that. Obviously, the stuff with Sam Bankman-Fried and stuff like that that's happened recently is kind of.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing.
Putting a stain on it.
To give people that don't understand what happened there was a guy called Sam Bankman-Fried, and he ran an exchange essentially, and the way they'd invested their customers' profits and the way they'd structured how their platform worked, they basically took these massive risks. They had no fail-safes. They gambled all of their customers' money and lost. It was near, I think it was 7 billion or something. It was a ridiculous figure. And people that invested in this coin, just their savings were just wiped out. And this is one of those platforms, like if you look at Trading 212, for example, it was something in a similar vein to that you would build up an app, you put your money into that and they'd invest in tokens for you. So it seems like a fail-safe thing, but it's just there's so much room for charlatans and highwaymen in the crypto space just now that it's so hard to figure out what's going to work well. Right now, for me, the only thing I'm invested in is Ethereum, and that's it. And I think with cryptocurrency, one thing Gary Vee always says, he says that 99% of NFT projects will go to zero, which I think is true, and 99% of crypto will go to zero, and it'll kind of be like that internet bubble, and that will come out the other side of it, and you'll come out with your eBays and your Amazons and other things as well. Is crypto something that you've invested in as well, aside from normal stocks?
No, there's like Bitcoin miners, there's crypto miner stocks, which are basically proxies for crypto, so Bitcoin, and MicroStrategy as well, Michael Saylor's company. So I just kind of trade those stocks. It was just because of the fact that it was unregulated, and I just had my plate full with learning about the stocks and stuff like that I never really delved into it properly. But I definitely, from what I know, it definitely has potential. But yeah, just the fact that it was unregulated. But I think all these sort of signs, like you said, is gonna be a buy. It is a big buy signal essentially.
Yeah.
That all these crashes and all this stuff is happening. That you need to think, right, now's the time that it might start to turn around.
I think we'll see the next. I think we'll probably go through another year of pain in this bear market. And then I think you'll see 3 or 4 years of just fucking exponential growth where it'll go wild. I'm thinking to friend circles and friend groups and people you surround yourself with. In terms of the people you surround yourself with, how many people actively trade, and you can have conversations with them about it?
None actively, like day trading. So that was a big thing for me. Why I purchased this course was to network and to find people and to speak to people, because my girlfriend will tell you as well, it's just it can get a bit much when I talk about stocks and crypto and stuff like that. So it's definitely good to reach out and find people that actually want to hear it, rather than it's just I'm just talking to them just to get it off my chest.
Okay. I'm wondering, taking it right back to the start of the podcast, you said that you've always been very business orientated. It's always been, anyone that knows you know that that's something you've been interested in. I'm wondering why you went down the route of investing rather than starting either an e-commerce business or a brick and mortar business. What was the decision like there?
So it was the timing of COVID, and obviously a lot of small businesses just had to close, and that was the government just went, right, all you is basically just, that's it, you can't operate anymore. And I just thought that was really unfair, and it really kind of opened my eyes to, I don't want to say I can't even say that word, authentic,
Authenticity? Authentic?
Like a totalitarian state, almost like they can just
authoritarian,
close down. Yeah, that was it, authoritarian. Yeah. I was struggling there, big time.
You got it.
For people listening, that wasn't glitching. That was just me there. But it was that realization of basically the government could do anything they wanted, and you're at the mercy of them in a sense. And the stock market kind of just completely went up in that time. So that kind of got me thinking, like, all these people are getting richer in the stock market during COVID, while all the small businesses and all that are hurting. So it just kind of made me rethink. And then obviously in January of 2021, then all that sort of popped off with the short squeeze and stuff like that. And then I was in. That was it. I was just sucked in.
Okay, so it was a combination of factors, the environmental factors, where you were at that point, COVID hitting and stuff as well. How have you found COVID in general? How did you progress through that? For me, I enjoyed the first part of it because I loved just the kind of ability to just hone focus on yourself. Like you had so much time to yourself to be like, oh, what am I going to do with this? How did you find that?
Yeah, no, I found it good as well. I was working in Lidl, or just a retail shop at the time, and we went to night shifts to work the stock, basically. So, because we couldn't, obviously it was 2 meter distance, there isn't even 2 meters between the aisles, like, it was just complete rubbish. But basically had to go to night shift, and then I managed to save up a lot of money from doing that, and you couldn't go out and you couldn't do anything. So it was kind of like everything sort of just fell into place for me to invest at that point, that I managed to save up a good amount of money. Obviously, what I was reading and everything, like the environmental factors, as you said, it all sort of just came together.
Awesome. One thing I think that drives us all, and this is something I mentioned at the start of the podcast, is the idea of a mission statement. We have certain principles. And I think there's a few quotations that I had a research about earlier today that I thought really applied to you, and I just wanted to hear your thoughts on these particular ones. I know I'm putting you on the spot here,
right.
So I just want to hear your kind of first reactions and just maybe let me know what you think about them in particular. So
okay.
The first one touches on our conversation about risk. So this is from Hormozy, the G. He says, building a business is risky. Living paycheck to paycheck is risky. Some risks come with upside, others do not. Risk wisely.
Yeah, I think it's 100% true. You've got to weigh it up. You've just got to, it's like your internal weighing system with risk. It's such an interesting concept. And everybody's, as we've said before, everyone's circumstances are different, and risk is different for different people. But as the younger they are, you just need to realise that this is the older you get and the more responsibilities you get, the bigger the risk becomes. So I think, as we've spoke about, it's just key to kind of try and take that risk as quickly as you can in life and just find out, right, what's my tolerance for risk, because you won't, once you've got responsibilities and once that weighting system just becomes so much on one side and not on the other.
You got a family, you got kids to take care of, you've got other things you need to manage. This is something that's just been on my mind constantly recently, is I think the only thing that separates great people from people that are just good at something is that ability to take risks and be bold within certain things. It's the only thing that separates them, is that some groups of people be like, nah, I want more, I'm going to be fucking ballsy with it, I'm going to do this all the time. And it's literally just, it's like a switch in mindset. And I think that's the only difference, is that some people believe that they can do it and some people can't. Where do you lie on that self-belief kind of barometer? Like, do you struggle with the belief aspect of wanting to be successful and wanting to be rich? How do you kind of navigate that sea?
I don't know. I was going to ask you about this. Like, do you believe you're born with this, or is it something that, like, through your life and your experiences, that you sort of like you get that self belief as you go, or is it like something that you're like innately just sort of you just spawn and you're just like, right, I just know what I'm doing. I know, like, I have a direction. I have like an internal compass that's like, right, I know what I'm doing here.
I think you're born with the want and the ambition. I think you're born with that internal carnal desire to want and long for something more than you've got just now. But I think the belief is something that you build up over time. I think your belief comes through the results of your actions. I don't think anyone starts and he thinks, I'm really going to be amazing at this, or I'm going to be the best. Like, I want to be amazing at podcasting. I want to be one of the biggest in the world. I want to interview incredible people. I want to take risks. I want to be bold. I want to be a multi-millionaire. I want to have a coffee business. And for me, I can see that in my future. That's what I want to do. But I don't truly believe it right now. I think that belief is just something that will develop over time. And that's something that I'm very much coming to terms with, is like the reps, and just realizing this is a great one from Hormozy, as he talks about sales and he talks about a lot of things. And he says that people's unhappiness comes from the difference between their expectations and reality. So if I expect within the next year that I'm going to be the best podcaster in the world, then I'm going to be extremely unsatisfied with my life. Whereas if I can say to myself, it's going to be 5 or 10 years down the line until I'm making a lot of money and successful at this and doing well, then it's easier for me to do the next 250 reps within this next year and just be comfortable with the fact that I'm not going to be successful immediately.
Yeah, I think, like, linking another quote to that, full of quotes today, but that Chris Williamson from his podcast, that was confidence without competence is delusion. So I think it's on that sense of, like, if you're confident about something, you have to have the competence to back that up. And the only way you get that competence is, again, the repetitions and going back to that.
Yeah, awesome. My next quote actually just builds on this as well, so maybe we'll end up reiterating the same points, but I'll go with it anyways. So this one's from Dan Cole, who's a guy I've seen on Twitter and YouTube. I don't know if you've been exposed to him before.
No.
Dan Cole, he's really good. Anyways, he says,
No.
your limitations are self-imposed. If you want something, there's always a way. But your ego is working to distract you from this open state of mind. Question everything, especially your beliefs about what's possible. Once you know what's possible, there's no going back.
Yeah. I think definitely questioning and having people in your life that will question you and say, is this a good idea? Or always be sort of critiquing you, but in a good way, not just shitting on what you're doing or anything like that. I think that's really important, because I I think the type of people we are, it's just like you can get really carried away and really excited with something and just be like, right, I really have a passion for this and want to do it. But then you just need to be sort of brought back down and be like, right, this is the practicalities of it and stuff like that. But once you kind of iron all that out, you'll be more than happy that you did, I think.
Yeah, it's just that it's like having that goal and then executing that process. It's bringing those two kind of magic ingredients together to make that cake. And one of the last quote that I have is from Richard Branson, and he said, "It's only by being bold that you get anywhere," which I think kind of perfectly encapsulates how we've been talking about this entire conversation, and the point that we're trying to get forth.
And I would say,
sorry, on you go.
There's a downside. No, sorry for cutting you off, but it's sort of a double-edged sword. If you're bold, you're putting yourself out there as well to be critiqued and to be sort of doing that. So it's like admirable in that sense as well, that I think that's why some people aren't as bold, or maybe they just don't have a passion for something or yet find a passion. But I think when you're bold, you are going to put yourself out there and you're going to be open to critique and open to that, and you just need to be fine with it.
Yeah. Critique's a hard one. You just kind of need to humble yourself and realize where you're at. That's another one as well. It's like you turn 18, 19, 20, and you think you're the fucking bee's knees. You're the best thing to happen to planet Earth. You think you know everything. And as you get a little bit older, you realize how little you know, and you need to humble yourself a little bit. And it especially comes from like that culture. If you're in high school, for example, and you're maybe one of the best at a certain subject, or you're very popular within a certain arena, and then you enter the arena of the global community of everyone that does everything, you need to kind of like realize what your standpoint is there and go from there.
No, definitely. It's just like big fish in a small pond, and then when you get out, you're just like, there's sharks swimming about. I'm like lost here. Like, what is going on? But it's all part of it, and yeah, it's definitely
awesome. I've got a few questions left. One of the questions is to do with your lifestyle for the next year, and we're going to frame it in terms of the year rather than the 12 weeks. What are the tenets, or what are the pillars of what you're focusing on, not just in terms of your career, but everything for the next year? So whether that be exercise, whether that be the trading, like what are the things you've kind of narrowed down and been like, these are the things that I'm doing for the foreseeable future?
I would say discipline. Discipline's a big thing for me, and something that I've struggled with. Whether that be in my trading or studying at university, or fitness goals as well. So for me, a big thing, I really want to complete a sprint triathlon. So it'll be swimming and stuff like that. I need to get back into more. I've been back out on the bike doing that, prioritising that, and running. My running's going quite well, but swimming's a big weak point right now. So I really need to sort the swimming. But that's just a goal that I've always had since I was young, that I've just been putting off. So it's one of those things where I'll just book it and then just go for it and just try and do the best I can, try and complete it, basically, not drown. Have you booked a triathlon at some point? Yeah, it's a sprint one, so it's the end of April, so it's like a 10K run, and then or a short swim 10K run, and then like a 35K cycle or something like that. So it's just a small one. Awesome, mate. That's exciting. Like, you need to get me a live stream to that so I can watch. A GoPro on my head, flapping about in the water. I love that mindset as well. Like, I have one of my flatmates, her name's Nikita, and she runs marathons, and we've set a date at the very end of February where we're going to run a marathon as well, because it's something we ended up training for a marathon in 2020, and the event ended up getting cancelled, so we couldn't actually do it. But for me, it's just at the point, like, there's no marathons on in Australia near me at this time, so we're just going to set out a course and just bung the Apple Watch on, not my wrist, it'd be hers, but just go out and do it. So Sorry, I was just going to say, I listened to that podcast and I thought that was so impressive that she's on her fourth marathon already. I was like, respect for that, because we done what I think 15 miles was the most we done, and that was
15 miles was
so monotonous
tough,
at the end,
man.
but
It was hard.
yeah,
And the thing about her actually is really impressive is that she'll come home and like it doesn't matter what state she's in, she'll be like hungover or she'll feel like shit or she'll like really not want to go, but she's just like I'm going, like I'm forcing myself regardless of how I feel. That's actually something I wanted to touch on as well, is something I'm coming to terms with is that regardless of how you feel emotionally or physically, the thing that separates the great from just the good is just like pushing yourself to do that thing you don't want to do, regardless of how you feel. You can mentally feel like shit, or you can physically feel like shit, but you just have to do it.
I think it comes down to like discipline, obviously, but see, it's from that 7 Habits book as well. It's just like discipline comes from the word disciple, and you need to be a disciple to yourself. So I really like that part of the book. It was something that stuck with me. Is just like if you're being disciplined, then you're basically a disciple of your own goals or your own what kind of you want in life. And I thought that just was a good way to think about it.
It's a good way of framing it because it's always easier to judge something else or someone else than it is to judge yourself. We often judge ourselves the most critically. So it's easier to kind of frame it in that way that you're a disciple to something else and that something else is yourself. Easiest way to come to terms with it. One of my last questions was, if you weren't to be doing trading, what would be some other careers and ambitions that you would maybe like to work in, regardless of how viable they are, if you've got any training? I done an episode with Steeps and he says he'd love to work in motorsports. One of the things I mentioned recently is I'd love to do like, I'd love to be like a writer, like a screenwriter for like a TV show or something. Like, is there anything else out there in the interest of Kyle Mair that you'd love to do?
Yeah, like so many things. Anything like working in nature, like even like going to different countries and see the people that like obviously walk on like paths, like when we've climbed Monroe's and stuff like that. The people that put their paths in, doing stuff like that. Anything like a tree surgeon, I think I would like to do that. Yeah. Anything that sort of, I'm just out in nature. I know obviously this is like the antithesis of what I'm doing right now, but I don't, hopefully this won't be forever. This is just like essentially a means to an end to get profitable, to get sort of the money coming in, and then hopefully then once that sort of stage is over to then go and do this. But obviously, you know, I like my cycling, I like running, anything sort of to do with that. But and yeah, I think I would like a lot of different stuff that would be more active and more outside. Because when I was younger, it's the typical, you say to yourself, oh, I don't want to sit in an office, or I don't want to do this. And then as you get older and older, the dream just sort of gets more suppressed. You're like, right, I've accepted it now.
You mentioned,
but no, I'd like to keep in touch with that childhood sort of dreams.
Mentality. Like, I mean, what's evident from that is you've got this kind of internal desire to be out in nature and amongst trees and beautiful forests and mountains and stuff. And that's something I feel myself very strongly pulled by. We've both seen Into the Wild, haven't we? The Chris McCandless story.
Yeah.
Like, that's something I think about a lot of the time, is like just fucking off, disappearing, selling everything. Yeah. I'll only communicate with people via letters, and I'll just be out dirt bagging and hiking in the wild. Is that like a desire that you have kind of in you as well?
Yeah. Maybe not necessarily permanently, but I'd like to see if I had it in myself to do it. I think it would be very, very challenging. But I think if you could conquer that, then I'm pretty sure you could conquer anything.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Absolutely. Well, what I'm going to do is we kind of finish off the podcast in the same way every time. And I asked the guests to kind of have a very honest, very raw reflection of themselves. So, looking at yourself, what do you think people admire most about you? And what do you think people dislike most about you? And you can be ballsy with it as well. What do you think people look at Kyle Mair and think, oh, he does really well at that?
Hopefully it's like having a goal and seeing it through to the end. I would like to think that. I've never been told that right enough, so I don't know.
It's very true, mate. I
But
can tell you that right now. That's how I look at you, very much. I mean, we have a recurring segment on this podcast where I just compliment my guests. But you're you're one of those people that I know if you say you're going to do something, you go and do it.
I appreciate that, mate, and it's something that obviously I've tried to foster in my life. Dislike wise, probably a lot of things. One of the things I'm bad at is not keeping in contact with people. I let a lot of relationships sort of go by the wayside, and that's definitely something I want to work on and do better at.
Yeah, I think everyone struggles with that. It's a natural part of adulthood, and I think, as we talked about earlier, it's keeping kind of curating that circle that you have. I think we'll naturally find the people that best fit into our life as time goes on, and that's just something you'll only learn over time. Just before we finish, I'm wondering, do you have any questions for me, just about anything, about the podcast, anything? If not, we can just finish here and call it a day.
Now I've got a good few, mate. So traveling wise, I heard on the last podcast you were saying you didn't really rate Bali.
Yeah.
So out of all the places you've been recently, where would you recommend to go to maybe live, and also where to go to visit?
To go to visit, definitely Nepal. Like Nepal's weird because it's both the most beautiful place that I've ever been, just fucking astounding natural beauty, but it's also a shithole in a lot of places.
Yeah.
Like, they burn trash on the side of the road. Like, it's an extreme poverty. Like, you would not want to live there, but it's incredible to visit. In terms of living, like, the best quality of life that you could get for the cheapest amount of money would be between Vietnam and Thailand. Northern Thailand is uber cheap. Like, you could go out with £4, and you could go and get yourself some sushi. You could go and get yourself a pad thai. You can go and get yourself a three fruit smoothie. You can go get yourself some spring rolls and a dessert, and it would be under £5. And just up there, like, the quality of life, like up in Chiang Mai, kind of pie, super slow. Everyone's just kind of strolling about on motorbikes. There's like a massive digital nomad community up there. So you'll just live in like a luxury apartment. You'll have a pool. You'll be able to go and get a massage for the equivalent of like £7, if that. You can eat incredibly well. And there's like, in Thailand especially, there's lots of communities of like kind of online entrepreneurs. So you can meet people that are making that Wi-Fi money as well. So I'd say that as well. But Vietnam is probably the place that I love most from traveling, mate. Like, Vietnam was astounding, mate. It was one of those places that just took my breath away so many times.
Nah, that's so interesting, especially with like the local, like, that's mind blowing that you can go out with like £4 or £5 and get all that, which would probably cost you about £50 or something like that. It's like
it's nuts, man. It's just so easy to spend money there. Like, when I was traveling, mate, I lived like a king. I was getting a double room, private room to myself with aircon and a TV, and it was like £10 a night. Like, if you look at that in terms of rent, mate, that's like £300 a month for your own fucking private room and stuff. Like, it's just nuts.
Well, hopefully if I can get profitable trading, that'll be straight there, because that sounds ideal.
I'll jump up there with you as well, mate.
See, Australia as well, you were talking about in the last podcast, it's like $30, like, there's really well paid work. I was wondering, like, the work itself, is it like, do they make you work for that money? Is it really tough, or is it just like standard?
Australians are lazy as fuck, mate, honestly. If there's any Australians listening to it, you're lazy cunts, mate. But no, it's really not.
Rich and lazy.
The thing is, right, so it's way richer than I thought it would be. I thought it would be very like the UK in terms of wealth, but it's actually a very, very wealthy country. So you get paid very well for casual work, but the cost of living is way higher here. So, for example, I pay in rent $1,000 a month. That's excluding bills, so that would equate to like £550 in rent. So everything does equate out, but in terms of the actual work, it's not hard. I do landscaping just now to kind of like keep me afloat and basically funnel money into the podcast and everything else I want to do. And it's paying $31 an hour. But the actual work's not hard. Like, they have a really lazy attitude to work here. And that if you come across here as a POM, is what they call you. If you're from the UK, you're a POM.
Right.
They have this idea of POMs of having this extremely impressive work ethic, and it's just what our normal work ethic is at home. So see how you conduct yourself when you're in like the supermarket or anything else. That level over here is super impressive to them because Australians are fucking lazy.
They're like the opposite of the Germans then.
Yeah, they're the least efficient. Like, honestly, mate, it just seems to be the attitude that things are done slower here, and they're just done at a slower pace, and they've become accustomed to it, so they don't expect anything more. And because these families of Australians are so wealthy, they don't want to do any of the hospital work, and they don't want to do any of the landscaping jobs or anything like that. They want to do super high paying stuff, so there's like this massive gap for it. But one thing I have noticed is like Australian employers are way more expendable with their staff than UK employers. If you're like with a UK employer, they care about you and they make sure to take care of you, and it's like a very big thing leaving a job. Whereas like the landscaping job I'm at just now, I've watched 4 people leave within the last 2 weeks or be fired. Like it's just like in and out. Yeah. And that's true across like a lot of the Australian industries.
I think you said it was like easy to get a job. I suppose that makes sense if there's always people going out the back door, they need people coming in the front door. So
yeah, very expendable.
Nah, that's good, mate. Really nice to hear.
Any other questions? Is that them all?
that is them all, mate.
Awesome, mate. Well, I think that's us for the podcast, mate. That was super insightful, and it gave me a better insight into how you actually went about getting into this trade and what your kind of philosophy is and what your goals are for the future. So thank you for that. I'm sure a lot of people get a lot of value out of it as well.
No, I really hope they do, and just caveat by just always trying to learn, and it's just one of the things where it's like I'll never probably master it, but I'll just try my best to make kind of life in the future that I want from it.
That's it. If there's anything to kind of take from this podcast, it's take risks, be bold.